What's up, everybody, and welcome into the newest episode of Crunch Time with Kruck. We are excited to have you all here on hand with us, and I think it's actually going to be a fun show today. We're expanding into more and more categories. So we're going to be talking about NFL, college football, college hoops. Then we're going to go World Cup, and then for our final one, we like to try to have some fun with it. We're going to keep that one a mystery until we get there. So, starting off, well, actually, I got to introduce all the cast members. As always, Max Williams joined in the booth. Max, how we doing today?
Doing great, Kruck. How are you?
Man, living the dream. Donnie Barry is back in the booth. Took last week off, but he's back, and he's looking to fill out that application for a full-time Crunch Time spot.
I mean, it feels really good to be back, obviously. You know, Target's favorite employee, signing in. Couldn't be here last week because I was working a shift, but, you know, I'd much rather be here than working at Target.
Well, let's hope that your employer isn't listening into Crunch Time, but it is a popular show, so who knows?
Let's hope not.
Let's get things kicked off right away with some NFL news. And before we jump into the rankings right away, I have some buy or sells for both of you guys to take your opinions on. Jalen Hurts, is he a one-year talent? Is this his one explosive year, or do you think he's going to be able to continue this seasons coming forward and become a generational talent?
I personally think I would probably buy on Jalen Hurts. And I would say this because you got to understand that Jalen Hurts is still a young, developing quarterback. In my opinion, I think he also has weapons around him that are still very well, too. I think adding A.J. Brown is huge, and having Devontae Smith in the roster is big as well. And I think the Eagles are a team, how their managing staff is working, how Nick Sirianni, a new coach in there, is coaching up the Eagles, I think is very important, too. So right now, I would not try to sell on Jalen Hurts. I would definitely go for him.
I'm right there with you, Max. I mean, he's 100%. I'm spending all my money on him. I mean, from we saw him in college at Alabama, even what he did in 1 year at OU. Dude is a dog. It's as simple as that. And if you look at just outside how they're carrying themselves, that being the Eagles, you watch Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey's podcast. They're having fun. Mm-hmm. The Eagles are having fun, and they're winning games while doing it. It doesn't get better than that being on a football team.
All right, and then the second buy or sell, the Vikings. Are they legit or not?
I'm going to say they are. And it's very interesting. A lot of people don't know about Kirk Cousins or whatever, but I believe in Kirk Cousins. I think there's something about Kirk Cousins this year. Obviously, he's getting all the swag from everybody else. He's getting swag with the chains and everything else. So now, I think, what was it, Thursday Night Football, he was trying to ask for grills from Justin Jefferson. But I don't know. Getting the real serious aside, though, I think the Vikings have more weapons now. Obviously, they took seriously getting T.J. Hawkinson. A lot of people don't understand. That's a big pickup for them after losing one of their tight ends they had. And I think Justin Jefferson is just one spectacular talent, a wide receiver. You just can't sleep on him anytime he gets the ball or touches it. So, and their defense, yeah, they've let up a couple of points on certain games, but they're battle-tested. They always try to find a way winning at the end of games. Sorry, Donnie, obviously against the Bills. Obviously, they found a way to win that one.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think that's why I think the Vikings are for real, especially in that whole division, which we thought the Packers would be there. And the Packers have been slowly not good at all. And so that's something to keep in mind is right now, maybe Jordan Love might start that game. Who knows?
I mean, yeah, I really don't know. Kirk Cousins has always been a really good regular season quarterback, but I just think the true test is in the playoffs. We'll see if they can get past the first round.
All right, and then switching from buy to sell to basically who's going to drop first. The Chiefs and the Dolphins both are on a 5-game winning streak, the longest in the NFL. They're both tied for 5. Mm-hmm. Who's going to get the first loss and lose that winning streak?
I'll say the Dolphins. It's a tough one because both teams are going to be good. The Chiefs, obviously, this week have Cincinnati in Cincinnati. That is going to be a tough game. Remember, a couple of years ago, Cincinnati beat them twice, obviously winning in the AFC North game and then winning, obviously, in the championship. But who the Dolphins play this week? Who they got, you know?
I couldn't tell you offhand.
I couldn't tell you off the hand. Well, looking at their schedule, though, obviously, I'm not going to know who they play first of all, but they play in the AFC East, which is still loaded. And you got to understand that the Bills are going to be a battle-tested kind of team. Okay, looks like they play 49ers. Okay, well.
In San Francisco.
In San Francisco. So that actually is a big challenge.
That's tough, yeah.
And playing against a team that is loaded and probably looks like they're going to win the NFC West, I think, in the 49ers right now. I think they possibly could lose that game. But the question I always still, and a lot of people I get with this, I thought Tua upgraded a lot this year. And I thought this was, when I kept going on, I said this was the make it or break it year for Tua. And I'm going to keep it as this way because obviously this year he's above expectations, but we don't know to the playoffs. And I think obviously the Chiefs are more of a team that is overall still coached well with Andy Reid in a game that's obviously with Cincinnati and still a tough schedule. I don't think they're going to lose as quickly as the Dolphins will. So I'll probably say the Dolphins at this moment in time.
I'd have to say the same thing, but it's just for the simple fact that the Chiefs have been tried and tested as a really good football team year in and year out for the past 5 years now. Since Patrick Mahomes got drafted, they have been a top-tier team. And so I just think that the susceptibility of the Dolphins being a new team that's up in the top, I think that's what will cause them to fall.
And then, since we've talked about the Dolphins versus Niners matchup next week, Max talked about it. The 49ers are likely to win that NFC West. And, I mean, a lot of their fans thought the season was over when Trey Lance went down. And, sure. Jimmy G just stepped in and he said, hey, I'm still the guy here. They're ranked number 8 in the power rankings in the NFL. And I say it before, I'll say it again. There's a reason he is literally he was called the next Tom Brady. Do you think the 49ers moved on too quickly from Jimmy G to go straight to Trey Lance?
I mean, at the time, I think they really were trying to get with Trey Lance because they were trying to build everything under Trey Lance's lead and everything else. I think now looking at it, though, you can't get rid of Jimmy G. I say you can't because Jimmy G just finds ways to win. No matter what you can say about him, he might not have the skill set as Trey Lance or say I'm not saying he plays on this team, Justin Fields with the running ability. Obviously, it's what Trey Lance has. But think about what Shanahan does is he's going to make whoever he coaches into a great player. And that's what he's done with Jimmy G, and that's how they went to the NFC Championship game there last year or playoffs last year. They made a big run in the playoffs, and we can't sleep on that. Obviously, we can't sleep on Christian McCaffrey on the team now and having Deebo Samuel and Ayuk there. I mean, that's another thing to keep in mind. So there is no reason why anyone should think that Jimmy G has fallen or should be gone or anything. I think he should be staying there for a while on that roster. And then Trey Lance can just help out, maybe be in packages or get into a chance to play.
And then, Donnie, one for you. You're a fan of the AFC East with the Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, and Jets. With Belichick having two mid-season, or middle of the pack seasons, do you think that this will be Belichick's last year coaching?
No, not at all. Bill Belichick, like Nick Saban, he's the GOAT of NFL coaching. We all know this. He'll be talked about with the Lombardis, with the Bear Bryants, with the best of them. And so I think with Bill Belichick, he only leaves when he wants to leave. He will retire when he thinks it's time. Mm-hmm. Now, that time probably could be soon approaching with how bad he's been. But granted, he hasn't been dealt the best hand. And then, like we say, all dynasties have to fall eventually. It was time for the Patriots to fall, and they have fallen miraculously. So I guess we'll just see. We'll see where Belichick thinks he's at.
So you brought it up, him being one of the best coaches. Do you put him above or below Vince Lombardi?
You see, the thing is that I'm always big on recency, and so obviously I didn't get to witness Vince Lombardi coach. That's way before my time. So I'm gonna have to say that I think for sure he will be. I think that he's had an incredible career.
I kind of agree with what you're saying. I think Bill Belichick has that pedigree, and he's done it for a while. I mean, obviously, you look at Vince Lombardi. He had, obviously, a lot of those years back in the 60s leading into it. I thought that's something you just can't mess around. And I always think about how style of football is played around the time, too. When you talk about playing back in the 60s or 70s, we're talking more crazy, running the football, bully ball kind of situation. Now it's more offensive generated, more like style plays, fun plays. And I think now, looking at it, I think Belichick is still leading that into existence, which I think is more important than how offense are scoring, and how winning is probably going to be more important too. I think it's probably still Bill Belichick, in my opinion.
I mean, absolutely. It's a battle for second place because we all know Matt Nagy is going to be number one all time. I mean, he was the best coach, hands down, ever. I mean, it's either him or Lovie Smith. You got to pick one of them.
No. Now, Kruck, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do the Bears go all in on Justin Fields? Do they start building their team around him, or do they let him go to blossom his career and they start rebuilding?
If the Bears are willing to change the way that they fundamentally play the game, then Justin Fields is your all-in quarterback because he has proven that he is a true dual-threat quarterback, both run game and passing game. And when I say true dual threat, I'm talking Mike Vick You know, Colin Kaepernick, or even Cam Newton, there is a 50-50 chance he runs it or passes it. You know, there's some quarterbacks that are like, oh, he's a dual threat. Like some say Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that because they're going to take the open pass over they're going to tuck and run it.
True dual threat.
Fields trusts his feet just as much as he trusts his throwing, so he is a true dual threat quarterback. If we do want to make the move to a quarterback and put it all into Justin Fields, the first thing we need to switch, and this is coming from an O-lineman, but we need to switch our O-line because we can't have drop back pocket protectors if the quarterback's not going to be in the pocket.
Right.
We have to have somebody who's agile and mobile enough to get to wherever we're swinging it. You know, a sprint out, basically block. That's what we have to start setting up because once we set that up, they're going to realize, okay, the line's moving to the left, Fields is moving to the left. Now we can set up the reverses, the naked bootlegs, things like that, which are going to be even more at an advantage for the Bears. So if the Bears are willing to change how they want to fundamentally look at the game from their offense, he is the quarterback to go to. If they don't want to change and they still want to be a pound the rock, running 60, 70% of the time, he's not the quarterback to go to because, yes, he can run the ball very well. I'm not knocking him on that. But he's not going to be able to take as many hits as a good running back can take. So until we switch our offensive style, I think Justin Fields is going to have a hard time being successful with the Bears.
Yeah.
But as soon as we switch it to suit his game plan, Justin Fields is going to explode.
Then back to what you said about him taking the big hits. We saw it in college. He is not afraid to take a big hit.
Oh, no.
It's same in the NFL.
Oh, no.
That man will not slide.
No.
So do you think that eventually he adopts the slide into his game, realizing, hey, I want to play in the NFL for a long time?
I believe that it's not going to be him who decides it at first that he needs to slide. It's going to be the organization that tells him you need to slide because the highest paid player on just about every single team is the quarterback. And when you're putting that many millions of dollars into your quarterback, you don't want to see them take a hit. Even if you had a Derrick Henry at your quarterback, somebody who you know is going to take a hit, you know can bounce back up, you don't want to see it because you're sitting up in your owner's suite. If you're, Virginia Hallis sitting up there and you're just like, okay, he took one too many hits this week. Somebody tell him to start sliding. I'm not paying millions of dollars for him to sit on the sideline and watch the game. Like Tua Tagovailoa, man takes hits. He does. He got a concussion, a severe one.
Really bad.
And they still paid him millions of dollars to watch the game. That's the crazy part. You can't just start feeding people money to watch the games on the sidelines. This is why Brian Urlacher's contract was not, his final contract was not extended or renegotiated because when he had a thumb injury, he sat out the whole season. Instead of putting a glove on, he sat out the whole season. Well, they still paid him $1.25 million a game. And so they're not trying to just spend money. Are the Bears one of the richest organizations in the league? They're top 50. But it is still not a huge money cap that they can just start spending money freely.
Right, yeah.
Transitioning into college football. Max, I have to talk about it. Michigan with the huge win, upset over Ohio State.
What happened, Max? What happened?
And Michigan now moved up to 2. Ohio State dropped down to 5, temporarily out of the playoffs. And I say temporarily, meaningfully, because I do not believe they're going to miss the college football playoffs.
Hey, I personally don't disagree with that either. You got to see, obviously, if you're an Ohio State fan, first of all, talk about the game itself for playoff chances. Listen, I was at the game pregame and tailgate, and I had a great time and all that, and I thought it was going to be a great game. But obviously, we were up 20, it was something like 20-17, something like that at half, but then we just let up 28 unanswered points to Michigan in the second half, and they took advantage of it. And you look at the stats overall for Michigan, Donovan Edwards, the second-string running back behind, came in there, had 22 carries, 216 yards, and 2 touchdowns. If you're a defense like Ohio State, you can't allow 216 on the ground and expect to win a game. That's just not going to happen. It doesn't go well. And I think also you look at, I got to still give credit to J.J. McCarthy, though, right? J.J. McCarthy, coming into the game, everyone thought it probably wasn't the best pass overall, right? Everyone thought he didn't have the best passing records and all. He came into that game just on fire. I mean, one of their lead receivers, Cornelius Johnson, had 4 receptions, 160 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And so that's something you can't happen as a defense like Ohio State, especially having a new defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles, a player that's more of aggressive, plays more downhill kind of defense. And listen, it's for Ohio State playoff chances. That doesn't still mean they still can't get in. Obviously, if you're an Ohio State fan, or even somehow, I don't know if this will happen, an Alabama fan, you still have a slight, obviously, chance to get in with possibly USC or TCU. And I think looking at it, I think the more upset you're going to look at is with TCU than USC. I think USC is going to avenge their loss against Utah and play. I think Caleb Williams right now, should win the Heisman Trophy in my opinion. It should just be handed to him how he's playing. But I don't know, Kruck. It was embarrassing for Ohio State, but hopefully they have a chance to play in the playoff and see what happens.
It was quite a career game for every single Michigan key player. They went out there, they knew what they had to do. They knew they were going to have to play their butts off, quite literally, and they did. They went out there, they took what they felt they deserved, and they deserved that second spot in the playoffs. Now, what Max is saying with the upset susceptibility, I think that USC is more likely to get upset going into the playoff because, like you said, Caleb Williams is playing really good football right now, but is his ego going to get in the way?
That's a valid point. I think thing about USC is, and against Utah, we look at that game. That game ended up being 45-43, a high-scoring game. It was a shootout type of game the last time those two teams played. And I think looking at it, Utah knows how to find a way to score with them. I feel like their defense from a couple years ago was good. Now, not anymore. They don't have that defensive pressure like they used to. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if Utah wins, but the thing about TCU is, against Kansas State, the last time they played Kansas State, they were down 18 points. And they had to find a way to come back in that game and win the game. And I think that's going to be something to keep in mind, especially with TCU the entire season, with them coming back in the game. So for Ohio State, you got a chance, but, it's looking at it still slight. I think most of the teams, if they play their best, it should be those top 4 teams with Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and USC. Obviously, the real rankings will come again out tonight, Tuesday night, so we'll see what the committee does, especially if you're an Ohio State fan or an Alabama fan. That's going to be important, where the committee ranks them at 5 and 6 for that spot.
Man, you guys talked about it. Number 3, TCU. They have to play number 12, Kansas State again. In that last matchup, TCU ended up winning it 38-28. And at one point, as you mentioned, they were up 18. A last-second touchdown only put them down 9 at halftime, and then they just came out and just took over in the second half. Kansas State now knows what they have to do to beat this team. That first half of play was their game. They had it locked down. It was in the bag. And TCU just came out with more heart and more will to win it. It is very hard to beat a team twice in 1 year.
Agree.
It is even harder to beat a team 3 times in a year. Luckily, TCU only has to worry about beating Kansas State twice, but this is the game that Kansas State has been waiting for. Because are they going to make the playoffs from the 13 seed?
I got nothing to lose,
They're not going to make the playoffs. Yeah. This is it.
They're fighting for that number 1 bowl spot in the Big 12.
Yeah.
So,
got it.
Right now, I see TCU losing, and I see Ohio State moving up, USC moving up, Michigan and Georgia are going to stay the same. And honest to God, I cannot bring myself to say it because I just don't think Georgia will lose. But out of all of the teams, the 5-spot Ohio State and the 6-spot Alabama have the best chances of beating Georgia, in my opinion.
Yeah, talent-wise, looking at Ohio State, again, I always say this, Ohio State's got all the talent in the world, right? They have talented receivers with Marvin Harrison. They have, when Travion Henderson is healthy, he's good. And you got Mayan Williams that's there that's healthy as well, which actually, there's a story, I played against him in high school, and yes, he's actually a talented guy. And so they got talent of galore, and I think that's going to be something to keep in mind when you look at it. The thing about Georgia is they can either come to play or sometimes they don't always come to play. And that's the thing about Georgia. Sometimes I think I've always said something about Stetson Bennett is he that guy at quarterback all the time? Sometimes I wonder about him and how he plays and his decision-making and everything else, and I always thought they're a running team and their defense saves them up most of the time. So that's something to keep in mind playing against Ohio State or Alabama. But, I wouldn't be surprised to see if that happens. If TCU loses in this scenario we got here, and Ohio State or Alabama, which most likely I think Ohio State would get in, probably would be a good challenge for Georgia.
Absolutely.
I'm going to switch it up, actually. I'm going to go over to the Big 12 for a little bit. I'm going to talk about my team, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Coming off of two very tough losses, one to Oklahoma, and then just this past week to West Virginia. I mean, JT Daniels just diced us up. I mean, there's no other way to put it. But, I mean, and then hearing rumors of Spencer Sanders entering the portal, I mean, if Spencer Sanders leaves the Oklahoma State Cowboys, they will have a horrendous fall off.
How many years is Spencer Sanders? He feels like he's been there for a long time.
He's started all 4 years of his career.
All 4 years. Wow.
Since 2019. Yeah, he's had an impeccable career. He went 7-4 as a freshman in 2019, 6-3 in 2020, 10-2 leading the Cowboys to the Big 12 championship where they lost to Baylor in just last year. And then this year they're 7-3. Now, I do believe that Oklahoma State has kind of been holding him back. However, I don't think it's right for him to leave. I don't see him fitting in anywhere else like he fits in at Oklahoma State. But with that being said, it opens the door for now Mike Gundy's son, Gunnar Gundy, to come in and start and take the lead of those Cowboys. And I just don't know if he can do it. I scrimmaged against him in high school. I watched him play. He's from about an hour north of where I'm from. And, I mean, he was good. He was a good high school quarterback. I just don't think that his nepotism scholarship gets him that ability to command a college football offense.
All right, moving forward into college hoops, talking about the men's side of things in the NCAA division. Max, what happened to the blue scare in college hoops? You look at the top 5 of the power ranking, it goes Houston, Texas, Virginia, Arizona, and Purdue. Not one of those teams is part of the Big Blue Rain. I mean, what happened?
Yeah, the only one that's up there is Kansas still at number 9. I mean, if you look at it, I don't know. I think it's just early. But the thing is, a lot of these matchups, and we're starting college hoops, they're playing in a lot of, like, tournament styles. So what I mean by that is they're playing in, like, say, like Maui Invitational or Phil Knight Invitational and other things. And some of those teams they're having are valid teams. And Duke obviously just lost in, I believe, the Phil Knight, one of them to Purdue, pretty badly there, 75-56. And obviously their next coming game is against Ohio State, which is another team that's, again, not doing bad in the Big Ten, right now in number 25. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. But Kentucky, a team, I've noticed this with Kentucky. If they don't have their star player, Oscar Tshiebwe, they are not a good team. They only rely really on one player. And if you're Kentucky, you can't have that on a team and a roster because you need 5 good players on a team to do well. North Carolina, remember, they were in the championship game last year with Duke. Against Kansas, pardon me. And North Carolina was a talented team that made a run. They were either like an 8 or 9 seed from the NCAA tournament. They've lost a couple games they should not have lost. They dropped 17 spots, Kruck, from the top of the roster. That is just incredible. But I'll say this about the teams up top. You can't sleep on Houston.
No.
Houston is a valid team. I mean, they're playing very well. Marcus Sasser can play. Their defense can play very well, and they know how. And Kevin Sampson is just a great coach. He just knows how to coach everything well for that roster. I think it's still way too early. We don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, conference play is going to get up there. But Houston's a team I would keep an eye on. Looking at another team, Purdue in the Big Ten. They just beat Duke coming off that thing. They might be a team to watch. And again, a team that's sleeping, no one's talking about, is UConn. UConn number 8. They're a team that I'm really interested to see how they will do in this tournament. They just came off winning, I believe, also in the in the Bahamas, pardon me, against Iowa State, 71-53, and they moved up 12 spots. So UConn, you just can't sleep on them. Who would have thought? They obviously, we know they're basketball powerhouse in women's basketball and everything else, but finally trying to get back on the men's side. They're good.
Well, I mean, you want to talk about big moves. Arizona went from 14 all the way up to 4.
Mm-hmm.
Purdue went from...
They're the biggest. With
what
19.
were they, number 24?
Yeah.
Moved all the way up to number 5. UConn jumped 12, and then a team going down a bunch. UNC, North Carolina, went from number 2 all the way down to number 18 after their second loss. The loss being against Alabama, 103-101.
Damn, high scoring.
That is, yeah.
And it's just... You know, I personally love talking about the Blue Rain, the blue groups, because my team is Wisconsin. Wisconsin was really good back when they had Frank Kaminsky,
Oh yeah.
and now he started with the Suns, and he's
He's
been
with believe it was in Charlotte for a period of time.
yeah, he was in
Hornets for a
Charlotte
period
with a
of time.
while too, and so you look at UConn at 8, Kansas at 9, Gonzaga at 14, Duke at 17, UNC at 18, Kentucky at 19, UCLA at 21. Those are the teams. I don't care how many losses they end up in with November. They're going to end up in the top 10. At least half of those teams will be in the top 10 because I get Duke just lost Coach K, whether it was last season, this season. I get there's got to be something different coming on there, but UNC, I believe that's still Roy Williams coaching.
Or
did he retire as well?
I think it's Herbert Brown, I believe. No, Hubert Brown.
So, that tells you what I know.
Yeah, no, you're good. He actually, I think, retired a couple years back. But I'll say this, Kruck, sorry if I disturbed you, but I'll say this about Gonzaga, right? I'll give Gonzaga a lot of credit for how they've got. They've actually right now are 5-2, but if you look at Gonzaga's schedule, they have one of the toughest schedules right now in college basketball. Going in this, they had to play against Michigan State, tough win. They went to Texas, even though they lost bad, 93-74, a really bad kind of loss. They still played a good Texas team that's building up. They beat Kentucky. They had a tough loss, looks like there, to Purdue. And they just beat Xavier 88-84. And they're getting ready to play Baylor here coming up, and Alabama, and all those other teams before they get into conference play. So, and everyone's talking about that with Gonzaga, because remember, they play in a conference in the West Coast Conference that, again, doesn't have really good teams. They're in a lower level division, so obviously you got to show off because you're Gonzaga. And so the fact that they're doing that for their roster, I give them a lot of credit. And you're like you said, all these teams that we mentioned, they're going to get in there at the end. I think a team that still I'm sleeping on is, again, Virginia and UConn. Virginia, too, a team that's obviously had to go through a lot with their football program, with all that. But I'll still say this. I think for Virginia basketball, they got a valid team. And they got a valid roster and everything else. I think they'll be very good for Virginia.
I know I didn't put it on the schedule when we sent out the agenda, but it's unfair to talk about one side of college basketball, not the other. So let's talk about everything everybody needs to know. UConn's going to win it all.
No. What do you mean? South Carolina's run it the last 2 or 3 years. South Carolina's sitting 6-0 at the top of the bracket.
Yep.
You can't sleep on the Lady Gamecocks. I think they go all the way again.
2 words for you: Gino Auriemma.
Okay.
Best college coach
I'm disrespecting her by not knowing her name, but have you heard of the South Carolina women's basketball coach?
Yes.
She is a dog, okay?
Staley?
Yes. Dawn Staley. She leads that team like a war general going into battle. Once those Lady Gamecocks step on the field or on the court, sorry, I'm in the wrong sport. It is over, okay? You see the little chicken on their shirt? It's over, okay? It is over. The Lady Gamecocks walk in, squash every team they play like little bugs on their feet, and it's just dominance.
I will say this,
all right, Max,
I'll say this real quick. Can't sleep on Stanford women's basketball. And listen.
This guy.
Listen, I personally think they're even better than UConn and South Carolina. I think with looking at both teams, they've got talented players overall. Cameron Brink, you can't sleep on them. Yes, last year they lost to South Carolina, and I think they're going to be a talented team. But I think Stanford's going to win it off women's basketball, guys. Yeah, it's tough, isn't it?
I mean, I don't understand how I somehow almost adopted Donnie into crunch time, and he doesn't understand. 1, Gino Auriemma is the best college coach of all time. 2, that he's a man.
I understand that he's been a dominant coach in women's basketball, but I'm telling you right now, it's like the debate that we had with Lombardi and Belichick. Auriemma is on his way out. He's old. Yeah. He's getting into the later stage of his career. Dawn Staley is the new. She is the new. She's going to continuously lead the South Carolina team to more and more championships year after year.
I'll say this, right? I think a lot of teams now going overall, they're kind of getting adapted to Gino Auriemma and their team. They're kind of understanding the players as a whole. Because, again, obviously he's had Paige Beckers on the team, still very well talented. Obviously has Asa Fudd right now that's really good, absolutely a player on their team. I think that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But you got to understand, there's a lot of teams that are going to understand what's happening, And there's still a lot of good teams in Women's Best. Can't sleep on, I think, Iowa for one, where Caitlin Clark, she might be up there. There's still like Indiana up there. Somehow Ohio State, I don't even know how, but they're doing very well up there at the top. Out there at number 4, and some other. So I mean, there's gonna be a lot of good teams up there at the top, but we'll see what happens.
Man, I'm gonna say this one thing before we move on. The Notre Dame women's basketball reign under Muffet McGraw was impeccable, and the only team that actually rivaled them was prime UConn. I mean, those games were sellout games, and I'm not talking like cheap sellout games. I'm talking like actually expensive sellout games. Because, I mean, you're talking about, you had Brianna Stewart was facing off against either Skylar Diggins or fill in the blank for whoever else. You had first-round draft pick for the Chicago Sky. Name's blanking me right now. I can't think of her, but I literally have her jersey at home. Why can I not think of her? My sister's going to be so upset. This is her favorite player of all time. But anyways, the first 3 picks in that draft, it went Brittany Griner, the girl to Chicago Sky, and then Skylar Diggins. I mean, you go back 7-8 years, women's college basketball, they were athletes. They were dogs. And, I mean, they're good. So, moving on to the World Cup because let's be
ole. Come on, USA, let's go.
I mean, let's be honest here, guys. I don't watch soccer only maybe once every 4 years when the World Cup comes on.
Sounds about right.
And I mean, I'm like 90% of the rest of America right now. But man, dude, Donnie, give us the deep dive into Group B: England, USA, Iran, and Wales.
So obviously, right out the gate with the U.S. losing to Wales, we were like, oh, it's expected. The U.S. is going to drop out in the group stage, but they were sleeping. We got our rematch against England, and we ended up drawing. One of the most boring soccer games I've ever sat through to watch, but you best believe I'm going to sit there and back my country. Although that game would have been nice to win, but right now with our win against Iran not too long ago, about an hour or two ago, it puts us in the second place in the group stage. We're looking to move on. I mean, that is nowhere near what anyone expected heading into this World Cup, was the U.S. to make it out of the group stage, and I do believe we're going to do it. However, with that being said, Christian Pulisic, he injured himself today in that game. That's going to be a big hit for that U.S. squad. However, I think that we've got the guys to make up for it, but obviously losing a captain is very tough. And this World Cup has produced some beautiful soccer games. Beautiful. Mm-hmm. We had my personal favorite to watch. Watched it on Thanksgiving before I had some nice food. Was the Portugal-Ghana game. That game was an absolute shootout after the 70th minute. It was absolutely ridiculous. And now, I believe it was in that game right there was a little bit of trickery towards the end of the game. Portugal's goalkeeper's going to clear the ball, and a Ghana player was sitting behind him waiting for that ball. If that Ghana player were to have stolen that ball and scored that goal, I believe Ghana would have won that game.
Wow.
But it was absolutely one of the most electric soccer games that I have watched in a long time, and I'm really enjoying the sport of soccer this year because of the World Cup.
Man, you look at it, there's currently 2 teams that are undefeated, like excluding draws as well. You got France, who's 2-0, you got Brazil, who's 2-0, and then you got Portugal, who's 2-0. Do you think any of them can make it out of group play and end up 5-0 with no draws, no losses?
I think that there's a way. I do honestly think that. I believe Portugal is going to lose a game, and that's not because they aren't good, but every team's got to lose eventually. But I just think that out of those 3 teams, they are the least strong team. Now, you go to the Brazil side. I mean, Brazil has shooters everywhere. They get the ball to anyone, not just Neymar. Anyone, if you're spending too much time focusing on Neymar, you're screwed because you're about to get a goal shot behind you, all right? I don't know many of the players' names, but dude's got short blonde hair, like dyed blonde hair for Brazil. He scored 2 goals against, I believe it was against Serbia in their game in their 2-0 win against Serbia. He had both of their only goals, and on one of them he had the most beautiful bicycle kick I think I have ever seen. And now it's like I'm being honest. I've always hated on soccer, but this year this World Cup is really bringing me some love for this game, and I'm really enjoying it.
All right, Max, give us the breakdown right here. I'm gonna ask you something.
I'll see it.
Argentina. If you're the coach for Argentina, do you still lean heavily on Lionel Messi, or do you start looking for the future?
I mean, obviously, I'd probably start looking for the future because obviously Messi is starting to get obviously up in that age where you don't know where he's going to be at in his career. And obviously, I thought I heard a rumor, Donnie might have to help me with this, that he was trying to go over to MLS. Possibly, I heard. Yeah.
No, yeah.
Is that right? I was gonna make sure.
Yeah, that's for league play.
No,
yes, for league play.
For
but
league
I'm just
play. But yes, like what you're saying with that, if Messi does come over to the United States, that will bring so much popularity to the sport. And I mean, I hate to say it, being tried and true red, white, and blue blood American. I mean, football will become the world's best sport. It already is the world's most watched sport, but it will become the world's best sport if we get international talent like Messi over to the United States.
And first of all, I think that's great, right? I think that's great to have that. Obviously, having those international players, that's because a lot of people, they don't see, like, obviously, we talk about football. They see soccer around, and having that another player there, having more jerseys and sales, that's perfect for, obviously, for that team and for the league itself. Getting back to the real question, though, I think you do want to start building, though, because you obviously can't just have, with obviously Messi on your team. You got to have other players, just like you said with Brazil.
With this also being Messi's last
World Cup. And so that's why you got to get into that, I believe, situation with Messi. And obviously getting back to, and I'll listen, I respect soccer, too. I love watching the World Cup. My sister plays soccer, so I respect it in a great sense. Yeah. And so I like watching, though, obviously the goalkeepers and how they play. I always like watching how the goalkeepers play and how they make shutouts. And obviously, a lot of these teams, it's been a high-scoring World Cup, I've noticed. A lot of high-scoring games. Obviously, United States looks like they're going to be ready to play Netherlands coming up in the next round. And then England's going to play Senegal. I'm going to ask this for you, Donnie, because I know I didn't know you were actually a soccer guy, World Cup guy, until I saw this. So now I'm just listening, so I'm going to ask you. United States playing Netherlands here. Netherlands they're not a bad team, right? They come in, they have some good players. I think they're going to come in, they don't have the team as they usually do. What do you expect from the United States against Netherlands here in that matchup?
I expect the United States to come out and play with a chip on their shoulder. They're going to sit there thinking no one thought we were going to be here, but they're going to I truly believe that the U.S. has a chance to make a deep run. I don't think that we win the World Cup, but I think we have a chance to make a big run.
All right, and then we got a couple more things just on the World Cup real quick. We were talking about MLS, Messi coming over for MLS. The last big generational talent to come over to MLS was Zlatan. Not even going to try his last name.
I haven't tried that, yeah.
But, I mean, when he came over, he was not...
Zlatan
Ibrahimovic. He was not modest at all, right? He came over and he was here... just a little bit before LeBron went to LA, and when LeBron got there, he actually sent him a letter that said now LA has a king and a god. So he refers himself to a god of football, and he refers to LeBron James as the king because King LeBron. And I mean, like, not modest at all, and that's totally different from what you'll get out of Lionel Messi. Messi is a very soft-spoken, gets his work done, gets in and out. And that's really strange to see because when you look at people like Cristiano Ronaldo, Zlatan, Neymar, like these guys are like, yeah, I'm that good. Messi shows up and he's just like, I'm here to work.
Yeah. No, just real quickly, I just like I had mentioned before, how these type of players are coming into the U.S. and all that. I think it's very important. I think also just, first of all, for the money for the U.S. they're getting, for all these teams and getting these type of players. I think it makes the sport more interesting to watch. I think it makes more people want to be tuned into it and see these type of players, especially with the influences of Zlatan. I'm not, like you mentioned, I'm not going to say that. And then having Messi come over here, coming up into the U.S., I think it's just going to be great for the sport and great for those type of leagues especially.
All right, so Donnie had to step out for a second. Maybe his... target manager heard his remark at the beginning, but the fun thing we have at the end, we are ranking the Rocky movies. So Creed 3 has not come out yet, but Creed 1 and 2 are on the table as options. Max, what do you have at your number 8 spot? Because there's 8 movies, so which one is going to be at the bottom for you?
I probably will say the Rocky Balboa from 2006. And I'll probably say that one because if you look at it, all the type of Rocky movies, they're kind of, at the end of the regular X, they kind of got off script a little bit, I think. They kind of got off script and kind of got more to the backstory of kind of Rocky a little bit more. And obviously, his career ending a little bit towards, obviously, all the pain and suffering and all that kind of stuff. And I thought just that movie was just a little bit too, I don't know, it was too based on that. And I didn't really appreciate that movie as much as the others. So that would probably be my 8 spot. What about you?
Absolutely, I'll agree with that. In my 7 spot, I am going to put Rocky 5, the one where he actually trains a guy to become the best, and he says, "Oh, I'm the best now," and then they actually fight.
Mm-hmm.
In the movie. I was not a fan of it. I mean, I want to see Rocky boxing, not fighting in a street.
Right.
So I mean,
yeah, I actually would agree with that too. I'd keep it at the number 7 spot. We're on agreeance for the first 2. I think it's just, again, when we see Rocky, we always want to see, and we'll probably get through his list, is Rocky actually doing it. And I think we noticed from the first couple of movies, and then obviously with Creed, we noticed obviously with those is that he gets very intense training Creed, and obviously the story behind that, and trying to be up to like his father. So just the 5th one didn't really do that much for me. So yeah, that'd be my 7 spot.
all right. Now, what's your 6th spot?
6th spot. Okay, this is where it kind of gets a little interesting for me. I would probably say Creed 2. Creed 2 as my 6th spot. And Creed, listen, I think Creed, the first one, I think Creed 2 is not a bad movie. It's better, I think, than the last couple Rocky movies. It's just, I think with the first Creed, it kind of got what we wanted with it. You know what I mean? It kind of got to the point of it. And Creed 2 is similar to the others, I think, with the Creed series. And obviously, we'll have to see what happens with Creed 3. But I think that's it just didn't live up to expectations when we're at 6.
You know, I have to agree with Creed 2 at 6 because in Rocky 4, he went over to Russia because his best friend, Apollo Creed, died by the hand of Ivan Drago. And I mean, in Creed 2, it's kind of like Ivan Drago's son, Apollo's son, but his mentor is Rocky. So it's like, it's basically just a grudge match from your kids. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a great movie, but the plot in the script could have been better. I think they could have introduced that movie a little bit later, but
I agree with you with that. It just felt like it was just a little bit over from the first Creed, I think, in my opinion.
In my 5 spot, I am going to go with the original Rocky in my 5 spot because the point of the first Rocky movie was not for him to win, which is why he didn't win the match. But you know what he did win? Confidence. This man stepped into the ring as a guy who was a so-so fighter, boxing for the mob, a mob enforcer, basically. And this man came in and he said, you know what? I deserve to be in this ring with the heavyweight champion of the world. And he went 15 rounds with Apollo Creed. And it was the biggest moral victory anybody could have ever asked for. I mean, Creed was not ready for it. You could see he was exhausted after the 7th round. And, you know, Rocky, bless his heart, just was taking a beating and a beating and a beating, and he finally went to the mat one last time, and he's like, you know what? I'm tired of being down here. So he got back up, and he kept fighting. Donnie's back. So, Donnie, you missed it. In our 8th spot was, or pardon me, in our 8th spot was Rocky Balboa.
Okay.
7th spot was Rocky 5. 6 was Creed 2. And 5, we just said...
Hold up. Creed 2 at 6?
Creed 2 is at 6.
I'm going to disagree, but keep going.
Well, what's your disagreements? Who would you put in the 6th spot?
In that 6th spot? Well, because I've said this multiple times. I'll reiterate it again. I'm a big fan of recency. Things that have come out in my lifetime that I've gotten to enjoy in the beginning, since conception. And so those Creed movies, with the 3rd one coming out next year, I believe that all 3 of those movies are better than the top half, or better than the bottom half of all the Rocky movies.
You feel that in here, man?
I feel
it.
It
Got really hot.
We're getting a little hot.
Get a hot take in here.
Nah, it's not a bad. I don't disagree with that take that much either.
Yeah, I feel like it's not as hot of a take because you can realize how good those Creed movies are,
Yeah.
and you can see like what they're doing with the Rocky storyline. And I like how they didn't just make like a movie about Rocky training a guy because everyone is expecting that. Those Creed movies have taken every bit of a good spin on the Rocky franchise and have made it that much better.
Absolutely. And then at 5, I put the original Rocky, and I've yet to hear if Max agrees or disagrees.
I personally disagree with that. I actually really like the first Rocky movie, and obviously we'll see as the list goes by where I put that. I put Rocky 4 on there at 5, and it's a tough take. It's a tough take at Rocky, but listen. I personally, when I look at the third one, I always liked the third one a lot because I thought the third one was a good one overall with the take. Because I always liked, obviously, Apollo. I always like to see how Apollo's friendship built up with Rocky. And I thought, obviously, with the first 2 movies we saw them fighting each other. We finally get to saw that in the third movie. And the fourth movie, I don't know. I just felt like, obviously, Ivan Drago, that boy, first of all, obviously killed and obviously destroyed Apollo Creed in that match, and obviously Rocky wanted to avenge that and wanted to take care of that with trying to defeat obviously Drago. And I think that was it just felt tough a little bit for me. So it's tough because listen, that's a great movie. I love the movie a lot, but it just comes for 5 for me because this list is still really good.
And then who's your 5 spot, Donnie?
My 5 spot, I've got Rocky 1.
Ooh, okay.
I feel
same as me.
I feel like I should go through the bottom of my list real quick. So to round off, at the 8th spot, I've got Rocky Balboa.
Same.
After that, I've got Rocky 5.
Same.
And then after that, I've got Rocky 3.
Okay.
I know that is going to be heavily debated upon, disagreed upon, but it's really what it is. I just like the first one over the third one, and after that, my top 4. It's not moving.
All right, so bring it back. Who's number 4?
Number 4, I've got Creed 2.
Okay.
And that's just simply for the fact of the continuation of the Adonis Creed storyline. It's cinema masterpiece, really. There's no other words to put it other than that.
Max, who's your number 4?
So obviously, I personally really like to put Rocky the original in my number 4 spot, and I put that at the original 4 spot because I kind of liked just how the storyline is. Obviously, we first get to meet Rocky in the film. We get to understand his point of view. And I thought, though, at the same time, though, I always wanted to, like you mentioned before, see Rocky as the victor. I felt at the end, it felt him not winning that first matchup. And then, obviously, we get it. That's why there's sequels, right? That's why they kept going on with the series because of that. And so I think just for me, I thought if he would have won, it would have got up more on top of my list. But that's at number 4 for me.
Well, you talk about winning being the main reason you go to a Rocky movie. Rocky lost in Rocky, which is why he was at my number 5 spot. And Creed lost in Creed, which is why it's going to be at my number 4 spot.
Oh, no. You did not.
So Creed is my number 4 spot. My number 3 spot is Rocky 3. And the only reason it made it this far up the list is because of one song.
It's the
Eye of the Tiger.
It's
That is the only reason Rocky 3 is up there to me, because the old adage, the biggest saying that's ever come out of the Rocky movies is it's not about how hard you can get hit.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how hard can you get hit and keep moving forward. Rocky got his butt handed to him, and he wanted to crawl in a hole and die. And it was Apollo Creed, because his trainer Mick actually passed away.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Apollo and his trainer who brought him out of the darkness and said, you have to fight. You have to keep going. So that is why Rocky 3 is at my number 3 spot. Max?
Me? Yeah. I would say the first movie, Creed, is my 3rd spot. And I put it at that one because, again, just like the first one, obviously him losing at the end. But I like the development, personally, of how Creed was in the beginning than it was with Rocky. And I like it because you get to see how everything else was with how both fighters, right? And I think Creed was a guy that obviously wanted to see what his dad was like. He wanted to be better than his dad and everything. And I thought just the development of that as it went on was a little bit too much for me, I thought, because I wanted to see more of the fights a little bit more. But I think it was still good to see, obviously, what his son believed at with Apollo. So for me, Creed gets my number 3 spot. Donnie, what about you? What's that number 3?
My 3 spot, I give it to Rocky 4. And I'm going to be honest, I mean, whenever you think of Rocky, you think of Rocky Balboa fighting Ivan Drago. So
why is it your 3 spot?
that's because I've got 2 better movies on top of it. And so, but I mean, everyone thinks of Ivan Drago going out there thinking he's going to do the same thing he did to Apollo Creed to Rocky. And guess what? He doesn't. And so that's, I mean, literally goosebumps anytime you watch that movie. You feel the emotion. Even though it is a movie, you feel that emotion as if it was a actual live storyline boxing match.
All right, and then your 2 spot, Donnie.
My 2 spot, I'm giving it to Rocky 2. Because you got to think about it. Everyone's got their, I mean, life's a roller coaster for everyone. Everyone's got their ups and downs. And in Rocky 2, he hits his biggest up. He finally wins. So I think that for overall storyline purposes and then just the movie itself are awesome.
For me, it is Rocky 3 at number 2. And it's made that journey up, and I'm kind of like Kruck as well, with Eye of the Tiger obviously being that song. But I kind of just like again, someone different. Just seeing the friendship obviously happen between Apollo then and obviously Rocky. You mentioned the first 2 movies. They saw them trying to get with each other, fighting overall. And I thought it was just cool to see that connection happening with each other. And it just was a very good movie and got my number 2 spot. What about you, Kruck?
My number 2 spot is also going to be Rocky 2 because in Rocky 2, it opens with both fighters going to the same hospital after the Rocky 1 match. It is quite literally picking up where it left off. Mm-hmm. And the part I will never forget about this movie, Apollo Creed is in a wheelchair and he rolls himself into Rocky's room. And this is the heavyweight champion of the world who just fought a nobody. And he's sitting there and he's like, "Did you let me win?" That's like walking up, that's like Alabama barely beating Avila University. And Nick Saban goes up to Mark Benavidez and he says, "Did you let us win?"
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yes, you won the match. You are the one who got the win on his record, but every single person in the building, in Philadelphia, in the United States, in the world watching, knows who won the match. It was Rocky Balboa. My number 1 spot is Rocky 4. You talked about it earlier. When you think of Rocky, you think of him beating Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren, and you think about all of the things that he had to go through. Rocky Balboa was retired from boxing. Apollo Creed was doing a fun exhibition match against the Russians because it was, either right after or in the height of the Cold War. And this guy comes in and just literally kills him with boxing gloves on. And Rocky comes out of retirement and he's like, "I have to do this for Creed." And I'm not a boxer. I've never been a boxer. Probably will never be a boxer. But if one of my friends died in a boxing match, it would take everything in my power to not want to become a boxer to get even. And I mean, this is the Rocky movie. There's a picture right here. If you Google Rocky 4, you will see a picture of him being held up by his trainers in his corner with an American flag over his body. And I mean, that is the most American sports photo there is.
Symbolic.
And it's not even a real sports photo. That is the crazy part. So Rocky 4, that is my pick for number 1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that take. I mean, I had obviously Rocky 4 a little bit lower than both of you guys and both of mine, just because I thought it was a little bit off-centered, a little bit from the Rockies, in my opinion. But I picked Rocky 2 as my first one. And I think Rocky 2 overall, I always want to see the person that always got beat down find a way to get back up again and win. And the fact that he found a way to get back up and do it again, being in those shoes, I thought that was just very fun and very cool. That's why I got Rocky 2 as my number 1 pick.
Now, I actually just made last minute changes. I know for a fact that I said Creed 2 was at my 4 spot, but I'm moving it up to my 1. Think about it. What's better than Rocky getting his revenge for Drago killing Apollo Creed? Adonis
son.
Creed going in and waffle stomping Drago's son. To the point where Drago himself has to throw in the towel so his kid doesn't get killed.
Yeah.
I'm goosebumping talking about it. See? But you know what I'm saying? It's just such an electrifying movie. It just brings out that emotion in you. You know, it's just one of the best movies I think of all time.
All right, and those are our lists. We'd like to thank you all for tuning in. From Donnie, Mad Max, Jacob Kruckenberg, we'd love to thank you all for your continued support. The new Crunch Time jerseys and polos are out, so make sure you reach out to us either on YouTube, podcast, or any other way you can contact us to see a picture of them or see them actually worn by one of the hosts. But until next time, this is Jacob Kruckenberg, Mad Max, Donnie, signing out. And don't forget, in the famous words of Rocky Balboa, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep going.